Hello and welcome to The Agenda on Politics Social. I'm joined, as always, by Phil Moorhouse of A Different Bias fame, and I'm Graham Hughes. You might hear some knocking noises. That's someone trying to get in. It's the zombie apocalypse trying to get into Phil's house. But in the meantime, while he's dealing with that, I'll just say a big hello to Johan and Sean and Matthew and Ivan in the chat, and Shropshire Chris and MR Bull and Ned Gibbons. If you would like to join them in the chat, all you need to do is hit that subscribe button and you can join the chat, and your words will appear on the screen as long as they're not defamatory or illegal or insulting or bullying or slander. Libel, sorry. Can't get that mixed up. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the Tory party conference this week. We watched bits of it, so you didn't have to. It was more of a joyous occasion than I was expecting. It was weird because the Labour Party conference last week, in comparison, seemed quite glum. Oh, hang on. I can't hear Phil. Oh, Phil, I can't hear you. You've managed to mute yourself. No, there's nothing coming through. I don't know what you pressed. I think you were trying to get rid of the banging, and now I cannot hear you. You might need to unplug and plug back in again. Vendetta says, only got the notification now. Oh, sorry about that, Vendetta. Oh, I can hear you now. Whatever you've done, it worked.
But,
oh,
well, no, because I actually had then just muted myself. I've now unmuted it again.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Right, well, I hadn't changed anything.
Oh, tech.
Whatever. Okay.
Tech.
Never mind.
Anyway. Okay, so we were just talking about the disaster that was the Tory party conference. But why do you think it was sort of more joyous than the Labour Party conference?
It's just expectation. So, with Labour, they'd won this big election, but actually Labour had spent the 6 weeks before the conference going, yeah, I know we won, but we're basically going to keep things shit for a while, which is not actually true. But that was their message. And whereas the Conservatives, I think, were a bit demob happy because they're going to choose a new leader, and this new leader is going to make everything all right, and they're going to come back to power the next time. So, I thought there was a bit of that, a bit of excitement. Maybe there was a bit of excitement from Tory delegates who were thinking that they get to actually do something, that there's some involvement, because they get to. Because if you think about it, who was actually presenting anything at the Tory party conference? You had Rishi Sunak, who did his speech at the start and then buggered off. Which was probably
was he even there? I thought he just went off. He went to America. Day. He went to America, didn't he?
Yeah.
Went on holiday.
I mean, to be fair, it was probably the right thing to do because they're moving on from him.
Okay.
But yeah, so he did his speech on the first day where he made up a load of crap, and then where he made a load of lies about poverty for a start, which I felt compelled to address.
Yes.
And then sodded off. But then who else did you have? So you had the 4 leadership candidates. Obviously, they got a fair amount of airtime there.
Yeah.
But then the other people that were prominent, you had Liz Truss. They had to turn people away because there were too many people queuing up to listen to Liz Truss. They had to turn 100 people away. Right? So she was like one of the main stars when they actually should be dissociating themselves from her.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
But she lost her seat, so she's a failure on multiple levels now. She lost a very safe Tory seat. Rishi Sunak didn't. Even Jeremy Hunt didn't. Jeremy Hunt's was much less safe than hers, and he won his.
Yeah.
And obviously,
yeah, but it was the woke blob. It was the woke blob, Phil.
Oh yeah.
Did the woke blob, the woke underground trans mafia mob came to...
well, that was the thing, wasn't it? So someone said about that, and I thought afterwards, it wasn't true, by the way. It's parody. But it is the sort of thing she would say, so you sort of have to feel, so people could believe that.
Yeah.
Because she's blaming... Do you know who she actually did blame? And this is genuine. She blamed Clement Attlee.
Yes.
He died before she was born.
Because he invented woke. Clement Attlee invented wokeism. He was being dead woke when he secretly developed the British nuclear defence capability.
Absolutely.
How woke is that?
I mean, how many people do you have to cross off your list to blame before you get to someone who died before you were born for you messing up as Prime Minister? But then you had Jacob Rees-Mogg giving a speech. He lost his seat. You had Penny Mordaunt giving a speech. She lost her seat.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking
people
about...
who aren't even MPs anymore. Not even just not candidates to be leader, but not MPs anymore.
And I thought...
giving speeches.
Where, apart from the leadership candidates, where was the... where's their up and comings? Where were they?
There aren't
Why
any.
weren't they
There aren't
promoting
any.
that?
No one under the age of 50 wants anything to do with the Tories.
I mean, there was some weird
Poison.
comments coming out. Obviously, individual comments from individual delegates don't speak for the whole party, but you had some really weird comments. There was reports of more than one Conservative member at the conference basically saying, I don't think the next Conservative Prime Minister's here.
Yeah.
Like they're not at the conference at all. That's the fear of some Conservatives. Certainly what they were looking at.
But there's this big load of Tories that want to merge it with bloody UKIP, isn't there? Or Reform or whatever it's called.
UK.
I've got a couple of super chats. Thank you very much to Anthony Fisher, who had a lovely super chat there. Very generous of you as well. Best time of the week with Uncle Phil and Graham. Oh, that's so nice. Thank you, Anthony. And also Alec Barrett, also giving a super chat there. Thank you. Did Ben Houchen give a speech?
Yeah, he did, to be fair. So, of the people who were sort of, who you would probably expect, he did, to be fair. But, a lot of the attention was on Jacob Rees-Mogg and Liz Truss.
Who aren't MPs anymore.
Who lost their safe seats.
Yeah.
Or were safe seats. Obviously, there was no such thing as a safe seat, I suppose, technically, at this election. But, they still lost them. And they were both backbenchers. So it's not like Penny Mordaunt could argue she was actually doing her bit for the party, like nationally, because Jeremy Hunt didn't. Jeremy Hunt, he sodded them all. He said, like, sod it, I'm winning my seat. So he just spent all the time in his own constituency, really. So Penny Mordaunt has the excuse she was also doing the national stuff. Jacob Rees-Mogg and Liz Truss were. All they had to do was focus on their own constituency.
But they just ignored their constituencies for years and just relied on the fact that they were riding on the Conservative Party ticket, which was a sure bet. Well, it was.
Quite ironic in Jacob
anymore.
Rees-Mogg's case, because whenever you would tackle Jacob Rees-Mogg, all the ministers were tackled over the same issue, but Jacob Rees-Mogg always had this smarmy attitude. Like, whenever you tackle them over some of the undemocratic things that the Conservatives did in the last Parliament. I mean, when I mean that, I mean they had no mandate for it.
Yeah.
It wasn't in their manifesto. Sometimes it went against the manifesto. And his line was always the voters, because when they were asked, how do the voters say they don't approve of this? Well, they can vote us out.
Yeah.
Well, they bloody well did.
Yeah.
And he still hasn't changed his tune on what they should do about it. Now, the only thing I will say in Jacob Rees-Mogg's favour, in his speech, he did make it clear you cannot go blaming other people for the fact we lost.
Yeah.
Reform UK did not steal our votes. We lost them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're still arguing you do this as far as like his line is that voters are always making this reasoned choice when we know they're not. In most seats, they're voting for whoever's got the right rosette on. So they're voting for the party, not the candidate in most cases. But he has this attitude that, they are. So therefore, they've rejected him, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've rejected Liz Truss.
Yeah.
So why are they being platformed?
I mean, Liz Truss can't even blame the fact that she was ousted as Prime Minister.
Oh, she can.
Do you know what I mean? Like, she was ousted as an MP. There was no shadowy cabal of backroom dealings that got rid of her as an MP. It was literally the people of South Norfolk said, we do not want you to be our MP anymore. South Suffolk or wherever the hell it is. North Suffolk.
It's one of the Norfolks. It is definitely Norfolk.
One of the fucks. Ivan, thank you very much for the super chat, mate. Was there a speech by the dreaded Nadine Dorries? No.
I don't even think she was there.
She wasn't there. She's flounced off in a big huff.
Yeah.
And she's particularly mortified this week when it turned out that her big rival for the affection of the albino sex yeti, that is Boris Johnson, Laura Kunsberg, actually had Boris's number. Yeah?
Well,
what's this number doing in your phone, Boris? You said you were mine, Boris. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone believes Laura Kunsberg sent it by mistake either. It's utterly ridiculous.
No, she just messed up the BCC. She meant to be BCC it, and she didn't. That's what you get from the BBC. One Angry Pagan's just picking up on the chat that I was talking about this morning about the carbon capture bullshit, which I see as greenwashing, and I really hate the idea that we're spending 22 billion over the next few years on this unproven,
it's over the next 25 years, so it's actually
unworkable,
quite a small amount of money.
Workable technology. It's nonsense.
Well, I agree that it is not the best way to spend the money. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not actually a huge amount of money. It's been billed at August 22.
Well, good, because it's not a huge amount of carbon that it's gonna
No.
you know,
and it's going to turn it into something that's also not useful.
Yeah, and they're going to put it underground, and then it's just going to seep out from underground, which it always does because it's a gas.
Well, it goes under sea, but either way, it's still not a great.
It always seeps out, and then
it's
it
not
pollutes
a
the sea.
large amount of money. I think people are overstating just how much money it is, and also like Labour's argument for it is they're sort of okay. They're linking it with net zero, but that's not their main argument. Their main argument is it's attracting investment for jobs. So they're trying to, because remember, one of their political issues is they've got to basically completely change the nature of our energy production without making people feel like it's going to be like the days of Thatcher when she allowed, because Labour are basically allowing certain industries to collapse, in this case fossil fuel industries, and people remember how that worked under Thatcher, and Labour need to make it clear no, they're preserving jobs. So you have to see it in that context. Labour don't actually think this is a great way to achieve net zero. They think it's a great way to attract investment and maintain a
investment from oil companies.
But
But
it's to maintain jobs is really what it's for. So see it as that.
Okay, I disagree with the concept of job creation is the be all and end all. I really don't think
job
that it
preservation.
Yeah, it's you are your job. I don't like that attitude. But anyway, we've got another super chat come in. Lots of £2 super chats today. Thank you to Chris C. Johnson is calling for a referendum on the ECHR, which we should get to in a bit. We'll come back to all this. We want to keep talking about the conference and the leadership in the Conservatives for a moment. But what Aggie Payne was saying, I missed this morning's live stream regarding carbon capture tech. Heathland, peatland, moorland and kelp forests are our best carbon capture and storage systems. No tech required. You're absolutely right, my friend. And also, mangroves. Mangroves are fantastic. Do you know anyone with a mangrove island, Phil?
Not offhand. No.
Oh. Anyway, is Putler a banned
is
word
yours
now?
a mangrove island?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It most definitely is. And the mangroves are protected by the government of Panama. And if I chop them down, I could see a fine for up to like $20,000.
Probably best not do that then.
US dollars, not Mickey Mouse dollars from Zimbabwe or something, but actual real dollars. And you could go to jail if you do too much.
You might be banned from your own island.
Well, yeah, they're really, really strict on it, quite rightly so, because in areas like in Florida, where they have chopped down all of the mangrove forests, they're now getting eroded by the sea because there's nothing protecting the land from the sea, which gets angry now and again when you don't placate the sea gods. Anyway, moving back from Neptune, Poseidon, to the Tory party conference. So, Kemi Badenoch, oh my God, she did a fantastic job of absolutely destroying her leadership ambitions, I think. I don't think she stands a chance now after that.
You wouldn't, but this is the thing. She is mad. She's mad. And she's crap at politics. She's like both. Yeah. She's Liz Truss and Sunak rolled into one. But at the same time, Jenrick also didn't do himself any favour. So it could still be either one. You're going to get either Jenrick or Badenoch for the crazy option, and then you're going to get either Tugendhat or Cleverly for the non-crazy option. It looks like, on the balance of probability, probably Jenrick and Cleverly. But, who knows? It depends how... Because
she said that she wants to do away with maternity leave, and then immediately afterwards said, I didn't say that. Like, immediately, it was like... Play back the tape. You literally just said, "Oh, you're taken out of context." I'm watching it going, "This is just batshit." Like they seem to have, if there was any anchor to reality, in the last 8 years, the Tory party's just set itself adrift.
This is the thing: when you see someone like that, you know, there's a certain amount of spin in politics. There is obviously, you understand that you're trying to appeal to a lot of people with a lot of different views, and the aim is to not talk about the things that divide them, but unite them instead in order so that they support you. But some of the stuff they're coming out with is so far out that it's like even they don't believe it. They just think it's what their audience wants to hear. But because they're not in tune with that audience, remember, none of the Tory leadership candidates actually understands why they lost the election. They've made that clear by the fact that not one of them has really referenced any of the, I mean, you always get after an election, you will get a lot of very detailed polling that then gets published. Now, the individual parties should publish their own as well, or not publish, but sorry, commission their own.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Conservatives can't really do that; they're broke. And who, but there's still plenty out there. There's lots of stuff. And your thing is, I've listened. If you look at the ones like Reform UK have actually been honest with their members about what they need to do, and it's all in line with what actual independent studies suggest. The SNP did the same thing, just like the Tories. They obviously did. They did worse than expected.
Yeah,
at the election. But they've also been honest with their members about what the issues are and what they're not. Because some people say, "Oh, it's because of this," and that. No, they said, "No, it's not. It's because of this."
John Crace said that there must have been a lot of people at the conference who didn't actually had no idea that they'd actually lost the election because they were just carrying on like they were still in charge. Like it was a bit like, is anyone going to tell them that we suffered the worst landslide defeat in history? No.
Well, there's a sense in which absolutely, pick yourself up. There's no point in dwelling on it, but none of them are addressing the real problem. It's quite, you've got plenty of evidence out there that says, do not become reform light. It makes no sense. You've got articles at the moment, news articles, that are trying to be sensible. And they're saying, oh, the Conservatives have got this dilemma at the moment. Do they tack to the centre to take Labour on? Or do they carry on going to the right to take Reform UK on? Yeah. And it's absolutely mindless that you would even think that. You lost 4 seats to Reform UK. And you lost about 200 to Labour. Like, who do you think you should take on? For goodness sake. And yet the fact that not only is that a genuine debate within the Conservative Party, but that they're leaning towards, oh yeah, we should take Reform UK on. Because, apart from anything else, what will happen? Because Reform UK actually, ironically, did better mostly in Labour seats, not Conservative ones. All they're going to do is help Labour if they actually manage to appeal to some Reform UK voters to come back to them, which is a big if.
Yeah,
could end up
they're going to split the vote.
They're actually just going to increase the level of vote splitting between Conservatives and Reform UK in Labour.
Don't tell them, Phil. Don't tell them.
They don't listen to me. No one listens to me.
Alec Barrett, thank you very much for the super chat. The carbon capture that makes sense is for concrete production. Actually, yeah, okay. I will go along with that. I agree because there is a lot of carbon made in the whole production of concrete, but it's one of the reasons why I think we should stop making things out of concrete. It is crap. It is a crap building material. And I don't care that the Romans had it 2,000 years ago. You know what? The Egyptians had stones 3,500 years before then. I don't care. I literally do not care. Like, it's a terrible, terrible material for building stuff out of. And it's why our infrastructure is absolutely crumbling all around us, not just in this country, but in countries around the world, because concrete has a shelf life of about 50 years before it all turns back to the dust from whence it came. And I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. Anyway,
not on a concrete roof though.
Oh God, it's supposed to be airtight, and it never is. And so the water gets to the rebar inside. The rebar rusts. It expands when it rusts. It cracks the concrete, and you have a bridge that's broken. And you literally have thousands of them in America. Like, that infrastructure, the Infrastructure Rebuilding Act or whatever it's called in America. A big part of that was rebuilding all the concrete bridges that were 50 years old and built in the 60s, built in the 70s, and were just falling apart because they're made of this crap stuff. And then you've got bridges that are over 150 years old, made out of real materials like metal, which are still doing fine. Anyway, moving on. Zephyr's saying Roman concrete was different. Yeah, still concrete. It's cheating. Anyway, Phil, so we were talking about the...
Did they grow it, though?
They grew it. They grew it in special concrete viaducts, aqueducts. They had aqueducts, They grew it under the houses in the hypocaust. Is it a hypocaust? I don't know. I just made up that word. Hypocaust. Anyway, did you know you could grow concrete? Said Ned Gibbons. Yes, I grow it. I grow it on my island. How many seats could the Tories have saved from Labour without the vote split? Says Paul Ewan.
I think someone calculated this, and it works out potentially about. Well, okay. At the extreme end, maybe 80, but that assumes that all of the Reform UK votes would go to the Conservatives, which they would not, for multiple reasons. First of all, there's plenty of Reform UK supporters actually hate the Conservatives and they weren't going to vote for them, come what may. Some of the Reform UK voters would, in the past, have voted Labour. Some of them would vote. Some of them came from the Lib Dems, some came from the Greens. I mean, they did come from all over. It's just they mostly came from the Conservatives. But even some of the ones who came from the Conservatives would not go back to them after the last 14 years. For whatever reason, whether it's because of the way they destroyed public services or whether it's because they thought they betrayed Brexit or whatever, they wouldn't go back.
Yeah.
And that's the upper limit. So they could have sneaked into 200-ish seats territory if you work that out, but that's not. So maybe they, you know, depending on how many of them they could have realistically got back, if Reform UK stood down, they may have got to 200 something, which would have then been a much better result for them.
Absolutely. Ivan, thank you very much for the super chat, mate. You only have to, you only got to look at the Tory rack scandal to know it's time to stop using concrete. Well, I mean, that is a scandal that's gone down through the decades. They shouldn't have made it in the first place. It was only meant to be temporary for like 10 years. And then at least Labour, the last Labour government, were trying to get rid of it. They had a huge amount of money set aside in the education budget for rebuilding these schools. And as soon as Michael Gove came in as Education Secretary, he went, no, we're not doing that. With the help of the demonic Dominic Cummings, who everyone seems to forget about these days. But, you know, he was in charge of the Tory party for a long time. We're hearing about this now with Boris Johnson's book coming out, in which he slags off Dominic Cummings in it.
He slags off everyone. He's gone. He's like Liz Truss now. He's just. I mean, this thing about the ECHR referendum. It's just. He's like Liz Truss. He's trying to achieve some relevance again. He doesn't like the fact he's out the limelight now.
Yeah.
Except he's got an easier time because you know he'll still get the clicks more readily because he's not such an obvious idiot as Liz Truss. But it's the same thing. He's just trying to maintain. According to people who've read his book, obviously it's not out yet, and I'm not reading it anyway. But those who have, the people have been advanced copies, and it's just like it seems quite clear he's expecting to come back after a few years. Yeah. He's going to give these. He don't want to be leader of the opposition. Why would you? It's a crap job. So he's going to let whoever replaces Sunak be a bit of a seat filler. In a few years' time, where it still looks like they're on for a hiding, then. He'll go, oh, you seem to be losing the next election as well. I'm free, you know, I'm available. I'm just saying. And then they'll offer him a nice safe seat. They'll get someone to step down in return for whatever, I don't know, because they can't give him a peerage anymore.
But yeah. And also, they've only got 121 seats, so...
Well, I mean, they'll pay someone off to stand down. But the problem is that then whoever's leader... would know that they're basically inviting in their own assassin.
Yes. But also, Phil, I mean, like, I worry about people just forgetting, like, how bad he was. I mean, I'm looking at America right now and how many people are voting for Trump, even though he tried to kill his previous vice president. He sent an angry mob into the Capitol building to kill his vice president. If Trump gets in, he will kill Kamala Harris. He will kill Joe Biden.
Well, he may not, but he
no, he will. He will. And he'll get away with it.
Will be.
Yeah, and everyone seems to have forgotten what a violent thug this man is. This rabble-rouser, this man. And that's only taken 4 years. So Boris Johnson, give it a couple more years. People are like, oh, remember when Boris Johnson was in charge? We knew what toilet to use, Phil. We knew what toilet to use.
What I would say to that is there is a risk. There's always a risk that time heals wounds and all the rest of it. But what I would also say is, if you think about the timeline, next year, I mean, the COVID inquiry is still going on. Next year, we have the procurement module.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. In a couple of years' time, the COVID inquiry should finally be doing its final report. And also, we may start to get more news on, because Rachel Reeves is trying to claw back some of the fraud money. COVID fraud money. So that could keep coming back into the news as well about the details of that.
I hope so. Keep it in people's
in actual
minds.
fact,
Remind
Boris
people.
Johnson may still keep getting beaten over the head over.
However, you say that, but then with Trump, he got done for all these indictments, so all these charges brought against him
America's
for
much more
stealing
tribal.
documents, for causing an insurrection, for paying off a porn star, for trying to corrupt the election process in Georgia. And he's got away with it, mate. Like, not only got away with it, people like him even more now because he's like, they're really after you. I'm just standing in the way.
Yeah, but America's much more
committing
tribal.
crimes.
In this, Trump never lost that support. Boris Johnson did. So it's not like Trump lost the support and then he's built it back. He never lost it in the first place.
Okay.
It was always there. It was just some people who were sort of steering clear of it came out and said, we can't have this shit again, and voted for Biden.
Yeah. I agree.
In this country, Boris Johnson lost a lot of support. It became very unpopular.
We've got another super chat come in from Chris C. Thank you, Chris. How about a referendum on stopping public school boys getting into politics, or a total ban on public schools?
just get Ofsted to inspect them.
Yeah.
Just make them be inspected.
And they have to follow the national curriculum and have it so that they can only employ qualified teachers instead of just some weird nonce who was hanging around outside the gym in town. Which is the situation.
You can't even always do that in state schools, but
what, you can't stop them from employing people who aren't qualified teachers?
Yes, colleges would collapse instantly. You won't be able to deliver any apprenticeships because you need people. If you need people to teach bricklaying, you need a bricklayer.
Okay, yeah, but that's different from a public school, isn't it?
Well, what I'm saying is, you don't need to. All you need to do is inspect them. You need to inspect them at the very least on safeguarding grounds.
Yeah. Also, if any of them have
Imagine Eton going into special measures.
Yeah, but I mean, also, there's anything proven that there's one of the teachers was abusing the children at the school, and the school covered it up. The school should be shut down. That's it. Yeah. None of this one bad apple bullshit. Shut the school down.
That's the thing that gets me. When
if there's any other private enterprise, you'll shut it down right there and then.
They have that. They keep coming up with this phrase, one bad apple, and they don't understand. Yeah, that's the whole point. One bad apple spoils the barrel.
Exactly.
That's, whereas people now use it as a phrase of, it's only one, we can dismiss it. That's that's 180 degrees on what the saying's supposed to mean. It's supposed to mean that one bad apple knackers the whole lot.
Yeah. It is infuriating. So who do you think are going to be the last two then in the Tory party leadership?
I don't know, but on the balance of probability, I would say cleverly, much more likely than Tugendhat, because Tugendhat's made no impression whatsoever. He's a complete fool. Even though he may or may not make the best leader in theory, but he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. And I think probably Jenrick, but I still think Starmer has the opportunity to properly hammer Jenrick next week, and I would do it. Because apart from anything else, if you ask me who Labour would prefer to win, I would say Kemi Badenoch.
Why?
Because she's mad. Unhinged. She's completely unhinged.
Yeah, but then she's putting those ideas into the public realm.
No, the ideas are there anyway. She ain't got any ideas. She's got no ideas.
Well, she's going to go on about leaving the European.
Yeah, but that's someone else's idea. It's not her idea. She's not promoting any of these things. In fact, actually, she's against it. She's actually one of the candidates that's against it.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Okay.
She says we shouldn't be talking about leaving the European Convention of Human Rights.
All right. Someone asked about DBS checks. Yes, you do need a DBS check if you're going to teach in a school. In the same way that it was you running a youth club or something like that, you're on a DBS check.
Any sort of role where you could be left supervising children, or vulnerable people.
But I mean, just by and large,
that's easy. You just have to have not been caught to pass the DBS check. As long as you haven't got a conviction, you pass it every time.
Yeah.
It's not a test of your character.
No.
There's no interview or anything. It's just, have you got any of these convictions?
And it has to be a conviction, doesn't it? It doesn't have to be accusation or anything like that. That doesn't come up.
Conviction. Even the enhanced one is just, have you been convicted of any of these crimes? No.
Yeah.
Or, anyway, go on.
Yeah. Chris is just replying to that, saying the law clearly states that anyone who has unsupervised access to under 18s must have an enhanced DBS check. Which is right. which is how it should be. But the fact that they're not checked by Ofsted, well, they can be checked by Ofsted. Just to clarify here, some private schools choose to be.
They can choose to
checked by Ofsted, but they don't have to. And I think that's disgraceful. How can they opt out of that? How can they opt out of the national curriculum?
Yeah, because either it's, if you have a national curriculum, either it's important to have it or it's not.
Yeah.
And if it is, it's important to everyone to have it. But for me, the biggest thing, it's the safeguarding. Ofsted should go in and inspect them on safeguarding.
Yeah. Because you've got a lot of internalized trauma that is, taken out on the rest of us once these people get out of their elite public schools and go into politics. Or the BBC, or acting, or drama, directing, musician, whatever you want to do.
They don't do quite so much harm when they're performing. It's more politics, really.
I just hate the way they get everything given to them on a silver platter.
Well, yeah, they think they've worked
they think they work for it, and then they get a column in the Telegraph going on about how everyone who didn't get everything handed to them on a silver platter is simply lazy. They just don't want to work, Phil.
But then they don't. None of them are calling out Jonathan Gullis, are they? When he's saying, I've written dozens of applications, I can't get a job," he said.
Highlight of my week, that was Jonathan Gullis, who was he the chair? Was he the late Tory party chair?
He was one of the deputy chairs.
Deputy chairs.
I'm not that stupid, but they made him one of the deputy chairs.
He was a teacher in Stoke-on-Trent, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he can't get a job. No one will play, and he blamed. Did he blame Clement Attlee as well, or was it just wokeism in general?
Blamed the woke.
Blame the woke
in general. But the thing is, as well, I mean, you wouldn't expect him to be able to get a job. It's the wrong time of year, and he's been out of teaching for 5 years. If I had tried to apply for a teaching job at the same time, and I can teach a shorter subjects, I probably wouldn't get one.
It is funny though,
because I've been out of teaching probably for a similar amount of time.
Were we talking about this before the election, that all these Tory MPs are going to be absolutely unemployable once they're not an MP anymore? What are they going to do?
If they didn't have their own business, or if they didn't have if they came from if they were doing an ordinary job and he was doing an ordinary job, it is a struggle. Because you imagine it, because it's like, it's because of my politics I've been excluded. It was like, well, it's not really, because I can come up with 10 reasons why you wouldn't have anyway. But that is still a factor. What sort of school principal? I mean, if you've got, because of his frankly racist, but certainly anti-immigration views. So what if you've got parents who are immigrants or first generation Brits in this country? They might not like the fact that the teacher of their kid is someone with these views. Yeah. There's all sorts of reasons why it's just more trouble than it's worth. Yeah. And it's not like he's teaching a shortage subject.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's funny. It's just funny. It is funny. But yeah, I want to talk a little bit. Are we done with the Tory Party conference? Can we move on from that, or have you got other things to say about it? Does anyone want to know anything else about it? It was horrible. It was like these bunch of weirdos who didn't seem to have realised they've lost the last election, walking around with these rictus grins on their faces. while everyone around them's going, what's wrong with you people? Like, you've lost. How about a bit of self-reflection, guys? And they're like,
I also can't believe some of the merchandising, because you think of Tory supporters being quite elderly, so you think you're quite mature, not really infantile. And then you've got these ridiculous merchandisers, like a mug that says, "Get caffeinated with cleverly." It's like, I like a bit of alliteration myself, and that's just crap. Or Tom Tugan hat on a hat, as in emphasising the hat on it. And it's like,
I've made up that there's a game that they play in public schools called Tug and Hat.
Yeah.
And the last person has to wear the hat for the rest of the day. It's not true, but I'd love it to just become an urban myth. So can we talk a little bit about the Chagos Islands, or the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean? So this are part of the Maldives, not the Maldives, the Mauritius. Sorry,
it's Mauritius.
They're a bit down. They're a bit downstream, but downstream from the Maldives. If you were looking at a map, they're to the right directly of the of Mauritius and the south of the Maldives. And when the Maldives, God, I'm doing it again. When Mauritius got independence from the British in the 1960s, The British said, no, we're going to keep these islands. We're going to keep all these islands. We're going to have a base there on the island, the biggest island called Diego Suarez. And they moved thousands of people out of from where they had lived.
Which even at the time was a crime against humanity.
Yes.
Because we had those after we decided after the 1940s we should have these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know what?
We're not talking about like 200 years ago when it was de rigueur.
Yeah.
This is like the 20th century, post-war 20th century, when we decided that sort of behaviour wasn't on.
Yeah. But what's really kind of funny about this is the fact that the Tories were the ones who started negotiations with Mauritius.
James Cleverly.
Yeah, James Cleverly. And now they're going, we're just giving it away. We're just giving it away. No, we haven't. We still have the base for 99 years. We've got a 99-year lease on the base. But the secret reason why the Tories started the negotiations, and it wasn't because the empire is over and it seems ridiculous to have these little specks of land in the Indian Ocean that we don't deserve to have. It was nothing to do with that, nothing to do with the morality of it, nothing to do with the economy of it. It was because a group of Tamils from Sri Lanka got on a boat and they turned up in the Chagos Islands and they said, we're claiming asylum in the UK. And it's basically to stop that. It was one of the reasons given, actually. Like, why are we giving it back to the Mauritians?
The main reason, arguably, that it would have happened anyway is because it was, we lost every international court case. It was
yes. Yeah.
Literally.
It would have happened. I'm not saying Labour's reasoning, but Tory reasoning. They must have sat down and gone, hey guys, we've got like literally a handful of refugees who have come from Sri Lanka, so we're going to have to get rid of this overseas territory quick smart. And then the front cover of the Mail today was absolutely unhinged because it talked about giving up our sovereignty, giving up this base, which we're not, giving it to the Chinese because Mauritius apparently is a big ally of China, even though they speak English.
Well, the thing is there, you see, if you want to get on side in the Indo-Pacific, like argy-bargy, then surely the way is to treat them with respect and be their ally. Because we have got the option now of helping to support them. We ought to be paying some reparations, quite frankly. So at the very least, we actually ought to continue that support. Because they were saying
Can also point out that Mauritius is also part of the Commonwealth. Fine. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, there was various right-wing nutters going, we'll see how they get. Michael Fabricant was one of them. I said they got them without our support. I said, we can still support them, mate.
Yeah. I'm being corrected. Yeah. I'm being corrected by Chris C. Thank you very much for the super chat. If anyone else wants to correct me and pay for the privilege, I'm all for that. Thank you, Chris. Graham, Gullis never taught in any Stoke-on-Trent school. In fact, he was only a teacher for 7 years before he got elected in 2019. Okay, fair enough. Really young. Yeah, I thought he was in Stoke-on-Trent. I know he was the MP for Stoke-on-Trent, wasn't he?
But it's that's what I would say on that. But I'll tell you something else that's going to happen in the future. I've got my crystal ball out. It's easy to see, because
you and your crystal balls.
I know it's not just that they clank about a lot. It's not just that James Cleverly and the Conservatives in general started these talks and. They wanted an agreement that's exactly the one we got. They can't even say, Labour got the wrong agreement. It's exactly what they wanted to retain access to that base. For the Americans, it's American base, but we want them to have it, right? Yeah. So we got that. But there's something else. The Conservatives also promised that any descendants of the islanders could apply for British citizenship. Yeah. So if Labour honour that, the next thing that will happen, some people start applying, then they'll go moaning about that next.
Yes.
When that's also their promise.
Yeah.
Oh, immigration! Look,
I love it when governments set things up for the incoming government to deal with and then blame the incoming government on everything that they just set up. But, Labour will get the credit for this, quite rightly, Sodom. And in the same way that Labour got the credit for the Good Friday Agreement, which was started under, the negotiations were started under John Major's government.
At least in that, it just shows where politics has gone these days. At least there was no political fighting over it. There was full agreement that the Tories were attacking Labour over the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah.
Whereas this is utterly ridiculous, and it sort of shows you don't have any real arguments because obviously the Tories need to blame Labour things. Of course they do. But it's like, if you're blaming them for things that we can provably say are actually down to you,
yeah,
and actually you should be taking credit for it, then it's like they haven't really got anything to attack Labour over. They're basically admitting they've got nothing to attack Labour with if they have to come up with things that aren't true.
So the Daily Mail, this is what they put on the front cover, is Starmer's surrender in big letters. The Chagos Islands have belonged to Britain since 1814, and include the strategically vital Diego Garcia military base, which is going to stay there for another 99 years. Yesterday, in a deal condemned as shameful and dangerous capitulation by the Tories, no, it doesn't say that, Labour agreed to hand them to Mauritius, which lies 1,300 miles away and is a loyal ally of China. This is a Commonwealth country that, like...
The Express was the funniest for me.
Oh, my word.
Today, actually... 4th of October, today's date, it was in the early hours of the morning, but today's date, they've got this headline, Nigel Farage says the Americans will be furious. And yet, I'm looking right now at the United States press statement from Anthony J. Blinken, the Secretary of State.
Yes.
And it said, and this was posted yesterday, long before the Express wrote that article. The United States welcomes today's historic agreement between the Republic of Mauritius and the United Kingdom on the status of the, I just say Chagos Archipelago. Sorry, it's one of those words I've seen written and never heard.
Phil, no, but on the front cover of the Rupert Murdoch-owned Times newspaper, it clearly says, PM defies US to cede Chagos. And it's like... Could you just print a lie on the front cover of your newspaper? Is that fine these days?
That's why they should go to prison for it. The United States has strongly supported negotiations between the two countries over the past 2 years and is pleased to see the successful outcome of this diplomatic effort. I could hardly think of wording it in a way that would give it more fulsome praise there.
Yeah.
Because that is like, there's no like diplomatic language of, oh yeah, we'll have to pretend we're all right with this, but we're not really happy. I mean, you know, strongly supported, pleased, successful.
No, they condemned it. Actually,
with it.
No, they condemned it. No, Phil, no, stop attacking me with facts and what actually people actually said. I just want to tell my narrative about how Starmer has surrendered the British Empire to the Chinese somehow. Because that's not what happened at all in any way, shape, or form. No. It is just absolutely bonkers. And also, someone said, "Oh, we've been giving up, our empire for all this time." And I'm like, before this happened, you and I could not go and visit the Chagos Islands. Now we can, because they were a military base. All of them. No one could live there. No one could visit. It was all locked down. Now I can go and visit those islands, and I want to. Because, I've not been there. I never think about that. It's just, And Reese Harris wants to know, what is it with the Brits and 99-year deals? I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's just something we do.
There'll be some reason for it.
But yeah, we the fact that the tabloids...
Humanity hasn't got 99 years left and it's fine.
the fact that these tabloids, just... sit there lying and nobody can do anything about it.
The Times is
so infuriating.
It's supposed to be a grown-up paper.
They're all tabloids, Phil. They're all tabloids now. That's Murdoch's legacy. He reduced them all to tabloids, sensationalist bullshit, and just lies every day. It's kind of painful. He's saying Graham bringing some strong JD Vance energy. Okay. There's a couch. Couches. Gary Arnold saying the Brexit penny would be a good name for a pub. Waiting for it to drop. They have a massive penny dangling above the bar by a thread. And if it lands on your head, that's it.
Yeah, I don't think you want... Health and safety might have some questions with that.
Oh, man. Anyway, it's called Kicking the Can. Says Fruit Bat. Yes, kicking the can down the road for 99 years. El Maestro says, massive issue currently being debated about the assisted dying bill. I'm open-minded on this, probably because I don't know my own mind on the subject. I think that's fair enough, but that people should have a choice.
Well, I was commenting today, what I find remarkable, because we've just been talking about how the Tories and the Tory press are making political fights out of nothing just for the sake of it.
Yes.
And yet, there's none of that with the assisted dying bill. I've checked.
Yeah.
The Telegraph, the Mail, and the Express are all in favour of it.
Yeah.
But it's not just that they're in favour. Like, there are some things they're in favour of, and they still make a big fuss and they froth about stuff like that. And it all seems quite civil. I've seen plenty of people making arguments both ways. And what I'm not seeing is a great deal of like argy-bargy or picking fights or anything like that. And it all seems perfectly normal. And I'm just thinking, this is really weird. And I'm trying to identify what is the thread here. Because you'd even get the impression quite a lot of Conservatives are going to vote for it.
Yeah.
Which would not have been the case. Like YouGov have done polling, like quite a lot of polling. And there's been no change in public attitude. There's been overwhelming support for it for at least the last 5 years, the whole of the last Parliament, and the level of support and the level of like opposition has remained in the public basically the same. And it's really remarkable because usually when you look at any controversial policy, if you then break it down by demographics like, age or political leaning or something like that, that's when you start to see differences. There's no difference. It's just this common thread running throughout party affiliations and age, because you might think there's more or fewer elderly people in favour. It's the same proportion of young people and old people and people in the middle. I've never seen a poll like it when you break it down by demographics. And yet, when they polled MPs in 2021, they found only 35% supported it.
Oh, wow.
So in a few years, and I know it's different MPs now, but even before the election, when Keir Starmer was saying, he would absolutely support a private member's bill that it wouldn't be a government bill, a private member's bill that he would allow a free vote on. Yeah. There was no big backlash. There was no clutching pearls or anything like that. And it's like, so obviously something has happened over the last few years. The public have not changed one iota, but MPs have.
And I think Esther Ranson needs to take some credit on this. She's brought the topic up to the newspapers and managed to get on the front cover of a lot of the tabloids in order to stress how important this is to people. And it's been something that I've always found infuriating, the idea that if my cat is in pain and isn't going to survive much longer, I can have my cat put down, but I can't have that myself.
But I have changed, so I'm sort of in support of it now, but I wasn't at one time, and it's to do with like the way you look at it. Like no one tries to persuade your cat to put itself down. So I get that. So I mean, if it was just like a suicide booth, like in Futurama, I would be against it, but it's not. As long as you have to sit down with a doctor, they have to make sure that you are, compos mentis, and this is your wish. You put it in a will, you put it in your, you get it, you can't be pushed into it, basically. You can,
that's what the provisos need to do.
The safeguards will try and prevent that.
Yes.
There will always be a case where you can, and the other fear, of course, is because, and Wes Streeting said this, because palliative care is so poor that some people may be pushed into it just because they just don't have decent access to end-of-life care, because it's not that it's crap everywhere, but it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the status quo is you've got lots of people in extreme pain every day that cannot really be managed.
Yeah.
And their loved ones are having to watch them deteriorate, having zero quality of life, and then they have no quality of life.
Yeah.
So over time, all of those arguments have always been in my head both ways. It's just that the weighting I attached to them sort of changed over time myself.
Well, as long as there are safeguards in place, I think it's perfectly. It's something that a fair society should put in place. But one of the safeguards should be: are you going to die? Like, if you're going to die anyway, fine. Yeah. No, but the worry is that, like Alf says, if it gets prescribed for depression, it can't. That won't. I guarantee that if the bill goes through, the law, there's a new law. It will say you have to be terminal.
Also, it's quite common in other countries that have this. It'll not just be a case of this is terminal. It'll be specifically a case of this is terminal. It's only going to get worse. There is no treatment for it. And you are going to be in a lot of pain that we can't do a lot about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of those things. I mean, you can have something terminal, and if it's fairly otherwise benign,
Yeah.
you know, you're just going to slowly, like one day will not wake up, then there's no need to hasten it because you can still have quality of life.
Yeah.
It's specifically that that quality of life has to be completely absent because you're just in pain and you can't do
And
anything.
the mad thing is, we essentially have this already. So if you are an end of life, and I'm sorry this is triggering to anyone who's watching this, so trigger warning for the next couple of minutes. You might want to skip ahead in the video if you're not watching it live. When you're in those final days, you're given access to your morphine, and you can press the morphine button as much as you like. They take the limit off when you get to the point where, you know, you just don't want to go on anymore. And a lot of cancer patients don't die of the cancer. They die from a morphine overdose where they literally fall asleep and don't wake up. And it's like this fuzzy grey area in hospitals and hospices that we tolerate because everyone understands why it is the way it is. But the fact that it is a grey area I think is wrong, and it puts nurses and doctors and health professionals in a bit of an awkward situation because they're not there to kill people. Do you know what I mean? If you want to do that, join the army. You know, they're there to save people's lives and to make people comfortable and stuff. It's and take away pain. Ivan, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, mate. That's very kind of you. My biggest concern with assisted dying is for disabled people. In Canada, this has been horrendous. Well, Ivan, like I just said, there has to be provisions in the bill to say it's got to be terminal. It's got to be pain. You know, it sounds like a horrible thing to say, but it's got to be painful. It's got to be something that can't be managed. There's no quality of life. And is absolutely 100% that person's decision to do this. Gary says, I've been really ill and only realised my mortality for the first time, says Gary. Yeah, some people ask me about when I travelled and the fact that I did all these mad things. And I'm like, it's not because I'm brave, it's because I'm stupid. I just couldn't conceive my own mortality. I said, I'll be fine. I'll just get on this boat, you know, travel over open ocean for 600 kilometers. I'll be fine. We don't need a radio. Who needs a radio? Or a distress beacon? Or life vests? Anyway. So we've gone through carbon, Chagos, the cocaine of the Tory conference. Is there anything else beginning to see that we can talk about for this week, for the last few minutes?
I don't know.
Have you got anything for me?
Sure.
There's
not a lot happening.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
Yeah. Well, the Labour have said they're going to pay back this. Well, Starmer said he's going to pay back the £6,000.
I mean, again, they should turn it into changing the rules. Like every time you do that, it's the right thing to do. He says that implies it was the wrong thing to do to take them. And it's like, you know, and you can argue it. I would argue as a politician, I wouldn't take gifts. You know, some of these so-called gifts are really, they were there to help the campaign, like the clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, and some tickets, like if you're going there in your capacity as a minister or shadow minister to support something, then, you know, it's part of your job as well. The fact that you enjoy it is, you know, sometimes you do enjoy your job. It's nice to enjoy your job sometimes. But some of them were a bit silly. You know, like if you're given tickets and then you give them to someone, you know, because you don't actually want to go yourself, then that is clearly a gift and you're not, you know. I probably would have said don't do that. But it is within the rules, and they should be emphasising that, and they should say, if people don't like it, that's absolutely fine.
There was someone on Question Time last night saying exactly that and comparing it to the Tories and saying it's a drop in the ocean compared to what the Tories did. And I don't know why the Tories are attracting this much attention to what they did, you know.
It's absolutely incredible as well, and not one single penny of public money has gone back towards anyone who's given any of these gifts. Now, if it ever did, absolutely make a hell of a fuss.
Yeah.
But none of that has happened.
Yeah.
You know, whereas what have we had with the Tories? We've had Russian oligarchs paying, to play tennis with, or their wives playing to play tennis with like Johnson and Cameron. We've had, you know, Robert Jenrick gave him a free dinner and he like let you off with 45 million quid's worth of council taxes. You know, this is stuff that really should be coming up.
Yeah.
Or Jeremy Hunt gets he gives a contract worth millions to someone and then like a few months later gets a little donation, 10 grand donation or 20 grand donation from them. Those are the sorts of things you should be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the sort of things Labour should absolutely steer clear of. They should make sure. I mean, that is the downside of it. That's what they should also be conscious of. If you accept gifts, you in your own mind might think I'm not corrupt, but the public don't know that. So you should always make sure don't accept gifts from anyone where, in theory, in the future you could make a decision that favours them, even if in your mind they're totally unconnected.
Yeah,
I won't see it like that, and neither will the public.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But I was going to say, have you heard some wag saying that the Labour need to declare the Tory party conference as a gift, or the Tory leadership contest as a gift?
The thing is, where Labour will probably feel very aggrieved is because what happens here is they have declared everything. Keir Starmer, when he became leader, actually made a big show of. He said, "Declare everything." He said, "I want you to declare your paper clips. I don't want the Tories or the Tory press." He says, "I don't want them finding anything that we've had that we haven't declared." So what they've actually ended up doing is declaring a load of stuff that technically they don't have to, and now they're beating over that instead. So I can understand how they're aggrieved. At the same time, they should have also foreseen it and had better responses, because I think their responses have been very poor.
Yeah, indeed. But something good has definitely come of this. I've forgotten her name now. Who's the Labour MP who's just resigned from Labour?
Oh, Rosie Duffield.
Rosie Duffield, that's the one. Thanks, Phil. So she's left. There you go. That's another gift that Labour are going to have to declare. They finally got rid of the toxic mess that was Rosie Duffield, who did nothing but
I'm still trying to
slag off the leadership.
That's disappointed at this.
Yeah, exactly.
I know I've only got access to a limited pool. I know it's like you. But I haven't really seen anyone in Labour who's sorry to see her go.
He's not in Labour anymore. I was going to say, who's Owen Jones? Owen Jones. He was disappointed to see her go because he's such a trans ally. He is when it suits him. Anyway, One Angry Pagan says pine martens are being reintroduced to Devon after they went extinct here over 100 years ago. There's some good news for you. Let's hear it for the pine martens. Much better than the house martens. And Alan saying press and media reform more needed than ever, but that is a political minefield. Well, it's not right now. Like, Labour have got a landslide victory. They could put it into the legislative agenda. They're not going to do it this year. Maybe next year.
No,
put it in the King's
Speech.
I
can understand why not, because it won't win them any votes. Whereas they need to put the stuff in that is going to win them. I mean, that is why, to be fair, they are fully focused on the stuff.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, win the votes, and then secondly, don't lose the votes because of the lies put out by the media.
Yeah.
And we've got Don Key, saying Tim Parker for cons leader, need chair of poll, heart. Just take the piss there. Who's Tim Parker? Am I missing something here?
Poll. What's poll? Let's start.
I don't know. If you would like to explain, Don, what you mean, because we're missing you a little bit here. But yeah, oh my God. So yes, I was just going to say about the Tories to wrap up. I don't want Kemi Badenoch to be the next leader, just because I don't want her to be standing up and saying horrible things.
See, that's what I used to say about Suella Braverman, but I don't think Kemi Badenoch. I don't think she can do it like that. She'll just melt down. I think she's the best one for any anti-Tories. She'll completely. It'd be hilarious in some ways. I don't think she's like a Suella Braverman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jenrick could be no better. Jenrick, because Jenrick doesn't give a shit.
Jenrick just says whatever he thinks the audience in the room want to hear. He's got no morals. His
politics has apparently changed massively. He used to be this centre-right, apparently.
Oh, really?
Guy just a couple of years ago, and now he's like Suella Braverman's understudy.
Yeah. Coming out with they're all. Are there any of them not talking about leaving the European Convention of Human Rights? Is that Kemi Badenoch? Is that the only one?
Kemi Badenoch and Tom Tugendhat has got himself into a mess over this because he says he's arguing to disapply certain sections of it. He says we don't need to leave it because we can just disapply it. It's like, no, you can't, mate. And he's citing a couple of examples where it's been done. It's like, those were emergencies. And it's like, there are a couple of bits you can suspend in an emergency. You can't just declare the fact that you've got asylum seekers an emergency.
Yeah.
It's a bit like in 2020 when I thought it was quite funny. We just left the EU and there was EU countries raising hardening borders with each other. But that was to stop the spread of COVID.
Yeah.
It was an emergency. So you could suspend some aspects of freedom of movement. Yeah. And they did. So it's the same thing, but you can't just decide because it's politically inconvenient, you're going to disapply it.
Yeah.
Because Hungary keeps trying to do that. It goes wrong for it. So Tugendhat isn't a mess on it. But in terms of, is he or is he not in favour of leaving? His answer is no, he's not in favour of leaving, but he says we don't need to in order to just disapply bits of the convention. Kemi Badenoch has said we should stop talking about leaving it. So her position is we should, unless she's changed it in the last few days. Who knows? Yeah. But her stated position was we shouldn't leave it. Jenrick's is that we should, and he's told an awful lot of lies, including some very damaging lies that Starmer should hammer in for next week. On that. So he's definitely leave. I think Cleverly's a sort of, we should probably leave, but don't quote me on it. I can't remember exactly. I think he's one who's, so I think there's like two who'd sort of say, yeah.
I love the way the Tories come up with these mad little projects of like, we've got to leave the EU, we've got to leave the European Convention of Human Rights. And it's like they don't want to do any proper work, like they don't want to actually.
They just want to remove, it was all, the ECHR was always part of the plan. It's just to remove our human rights. That's all it's ever been.
They don't want to govern. They don't want to govern. They don't want to be managers of everyday life. It's boring for them. They want to have this, whatever. This quest. They want to go on a quest.
It's all it is, and all it's ever been. Attacks on immigration. Yeah, it's all been about actually getting us to because they never used to blame immigration before universal suffrage. When hardly anyone had the vote, there was no complaints about immigrants then.
Yeah. Yeah.
It all came up when ordinary people got the vote and thought, shit, how are we going to persuade them to vote against their own interests? Oh, we'll tell them that we're going to be mean to immigrants. But the same law that protects them protects us. That's what it's really about. They don't care about 25,000 asylum seekers.
No, they don't.
Care about 68 million.
And when they pretend that they care about the people in the boats, they're doing it because, if we're really horrible to these asylum seekers, then it means that people won't die coming over in boats. And like, no, if you open safe routes, they won't die in the boats. 100%. 100%. Big Hon, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Big Hon, and good seeing you last week. The next Tory PM probably isn't in Parliament yet, which was a point made on James O'Brien's show this morning. He said someone mentioned it at the conference that the next Tory Prime Minister probably isn't at the conference.
Yeah. I mean, they have had some new MPs because a load retired. Yeah. So you never know. But it's certainly not one of the four who's vying to replace someone. No. And I'm fairly confident it's not Boris Johnson either.
There was a fantastic cartoon in one of the papers, and it was the four leadership contenders on the deck of the Titanic fighting over the hat that says deck chair arranger. Yeah. That is brilliant. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. So thank you very much for joining us. Thanks very much to Phil for giving us his wisdom this Friday afternoon. I'll be back at 9:30 tonight for the Politics Social with the usual crowd. So please join us for that. You're very welcome to do so. Thank you very much for the chat. Thank you very much for the super chats. Oh, another one's just come in from Ivan. Whoa, in the last couple of seconds there, just stuck it in under the line. Thank you very much to Ivan. Labour should keep saying that the Tories want the UK to be like Russia and Belarus.
No, what they should say is what the Tories want to do is bring back Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and Liz Truss as Chancellor. And the thing is, they will not even deny it.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. True. They should say, they could point to the fact that Liz Truss was the star attraction they had to turn people away. I cannot believe it. And that was the main. It seemed to me to be the main stage. She was stuffed away in a little side room last year, but this year main stage, and they had to turn people away. So they can point to the fact that she was the star attraction at their conference. They can't deny it.
Yeah,
that's what Labour should do. Say they want to bring back Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and Liz Truss as Chancellor.
I don't think people would have such a huge problem with Boris Johnson coming back into politics. I really don't, because I think people's memories are short. But they're not, because he's charismatic, because he's got Riz. Whereas Liz Truss is like the anti-Riz. She like sucks in all the charisma from the room and it just disappears into a black hole, which is Liz Truss. But that
Well, that's the only
footage
way
of
she
her
can get out,
walking down the corridor, being asked questions, and she's just smiling and just walking along, it's terrifying. It's absolutely... It's like Uncanny Valley. It's like she's been reanimated. It's like this corpse is magically walking that, but it hasn't learnt language yet, so it just walks. Yeah.
It's because she's concentrated. She can't find doors out of places. She has to keep looking.
Anyway, Phil, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for watching. See you at 9:30 tonight. And until then, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.